We cut through the partisan talking points. We're not interested in perpetuating fear. We're interested in seeking truth, hearing what's really going on America's borderland. You mentioned something that I thought was fascinating is, the other OTMs, that's called other than Mexicans. What most people don't know is that's how we identify them. That's the identifier was actually created by smuggling organizations, but we use it currently in our process to identify who is the demographic coming across. Mexicans are Mexicans. Everything from South America past Mexico is going to be considered other than Mexicans. And then anything outside of that, your other countries, Africa, Middle East, anything else, we would consider exotics. And those are very rare for us to see on the border. And so those listening, just so you guys stay along with the conversation at times, I want to make sure you guys know those things. Sorry, Sheriff, I just want to make sure, it's just a little housekeeping for those who are listening so we can keep them on the conversation. Everything you're saying is awesome. Like, you're right on target. I love hearing your opinion. I think the most interesting thing that you mentioned is not everyone sees it the same way as they're humans. And that is a challenge, because when you have these arguments in the media, not even just media, in social media, right? Just the average person who doesn't really understand it, they're emotionally invested in this topic, and they want to just jump to conclusions like, shut the border, forget it, close it completely. And then there's the other side of the argument that says, open the border, right? And so those two arguments are the stark differences from different sides of the political spectrum, but also just the way people see the border. You're someone who's not of Hispanic descent. You've grown up on a border. You've been raised around a border town. So you've seen it in the most human eyes possible. And so your mentioning of they're human is not something that the average person outside of a border town would even acknowledge for some reason. And I wanted to make sure that people really understand that comment from you. If you wouldn't mind elaborating on, where is it that moment when you realize, man, they're no different than us, but they're in a different country? That kind of connection to it, or the empathetic views, I think is valuable for us as a country to kind of get down to the foundation of, hey, step back, and let's not judge the situation. Let's just identify one thing. Those are humans, and it's not for me. Like you as a border patrol agent, it wasn't for you to determine what the outcome of this is, just to apprehend any individual coming across and then process them as per policy. And so for you to mention that, Sheriff, I find that very fascinating, but also, I love that you said that.
Well, even in my interviews that I have, I guess because I was a border patrol agent now to the sheriff's office, a lot of media attention, and I even catch myself, and I'm at times disappointed when I call them they or them, because again, that they are, and I use the term illegal aliens, I always will, has no negative connotation to it. It's a term that we use. But going to speaking to back in Arizona, and I'm trying to frame up. So I used to be a PIO, public information officer there in Douglas as well, community relations officer. Something I did not want to do. Victor Monjadas was our patrol agent in charge at that time, and I can remember sitting in his office and go, man, I'm just a field soup. I just want to be a field soup, and them really pushing me to do this, and I'm glad he did, because it gave me some other experiences in communication and talking and really educating people about our job. But the first thing I like to tell folks when I'm on interviews and whatnot, or ride-alongs, is we're blessed to be born in this country. Why I was picked to be born here, I have no idea. But had I been born anywhere else, I'd be doing the same thing. We're still the greatest country in the world. And it's because of rule of law, along our border, that unfortunately right now we don't have. And that's not because of our U.S. Border Patrol agents. That's because of the people of this administration. And you've probably heard me say before that you take it back to when I first came to the Border Patrol, President Clinton was president. And then to President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and then about a year and a half of President Biden. But those first four administrations, they all contributed to border security. They all built upon what the previous president had done, some more than others, of course, and we know which ones those were. But still, President Clinton and President Obama, they still built border fence.
Yeah.
President Biden, our current president, under President Obama as the vice president, they built border fence. So what's happened now is there's no policy at the border. There is absolutely, it's lawless.
Yeah.
Meaning, it's a free for all, and right. That's the word I typically use, a free for all. And it's still, it's two different issues: border security we must establish border security before we even look at immigration reform. So when that Senate bill they just put forth, that was really, an immigration reform, but it didn't deal with border security. We have to secure a border.
Yeah, talk more on that. Those who don't understand that one, because that's still new to me. I was trying to read up on it, but that new bill that they're trying to pass, what was it? Why is it such an issue?
Well, the first bone I had to pick with it was, of course, they wanted to call it a border security bill, but it included $60 billion for Ukraine, $17 billion for Israel. And look, veteran myself, I've actually got a son that's deployed out to the Middle East right now. I am a supporter of the United States of America going out and being kind of that police force in the world, meaning protecting those that can't protect themselves. Growing up, I bullied a little bit. I may have done a little bit of bullying, but I also kind of stood up to those bullies as well for other friends. And I believe in us doing that as a country, taking care of those countries that can't take care of others. And again, having a son that's serving. But if we're going to focus on a border security bill, let's focus on one that just talks about the border. And the second one I had to pick with it when it started talking about numbers, certain trigger points, we'll shut the border down if we reach this many a week or this many a day. Well, look, when I was in Arizona back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were so busy that the assistant U.S. attorneys started establishing thresholds for marijuana smuggling, for illegal alien smuggling. And I can remember one of the first thresholds being 500 pounds of marijuana. If you had 500 pounds or more, you'd be prosecuted. If you had 499 or less, you wouldn't. Illegal aliens was about 20 in a load. If you had 20 or more, prosecuted less, you wouldn't be. So what did the cartels do, the smugglers do? They played the numbers game, 499 pounds, 19 illegal aliens. So if our government starts playing the numbers game, it's just going to play right into the cartel hands. It's not going to solve anything at all.